You are basically with awareness setting up a very large funnel. And the risk with that is that you have a lot of people that are not so relevant to you. And the brand is actually the filter or the gate for people to understand if it's an interesting funnel for them or not. It's absolutely fundamental to be able to state your purpose in a vision statement, a one-liner statement, in a paragraph statement, in a one-pager, and in an essay. The work that we do, the focus that we have, is on eliminating and avoiding emissions rather than compensating them. This has a lot of scientific implication, a lot of methodological implications, but we make that clear at this stage. We're not trying to display science because it's part of our brand. We're actually doing science stuff. The brand flows from these activities. It's not the other way around. So how do you make sure that your brand is relevant to this stage? Is by making...
Bonjour, and welcome to Mission First, the podcast to learn from successful entrepreneurs changing the world for the better. In this podcast, you will learn from entrepreneurs who have already found product market fit and are scaling up fast. We discuss their challenges and the strategies they have applied to make things work. Think of it as a masterclass about business and product innovation, growth marketing, and leadership. I am Gilles Toussaint. I help mission-driven companies exceed their revenue objectives with growth marketing, product-led growth, and LinkedIn personal branding strategies. Branding and sustainability are two trendy words in this climate change and innovation era. But it's one thing to build a brand on paper, and it's another thing to integrate branding as part of the whole company and the whole customer journey, and to do that without greenwashing. Today, I feel extremely lucky to welcome Nathan Bonisso, co-founder of Plan A. Every company in the world needs to decrease the carbon footprint and the negative impact on the planet. But it's not an easy thing to do. That's why Plan A is here. Plan A helps foster sustainable transition in the business world. More than 1,500 companies trust them to decarbonize their business, with clients such as BMW, Deutsche Bank, Visa, Personio, or KFC. They've raised $27 million this year. In the episode 3 of Mission First, I interviewed their CEO, Lubomila Jordanova. It was a very insightful episode, and today, 3 years later, we're gonna talk about branding with Nathan, in particular about these 3 topics that all green tech and sustainability-driven companies of this world should know about. How to build a sustainable brand without greenwashing. How to integrate branding as part of the whole company, including how to make science as part of the brand, and how the brand can be useful through the entire funnel of customer acquisition and product. Nathan, I'm very happy to welcome you today. How are you?
Hi, Gilles. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing very, very good today. It's an exciting day at Plan A. We're doing lots of strategy workshops on understanding how to best spend that funding that we have received.
Lubomila Jordanova, one of your co-founders, I had the chance to interview her back in 2020. And Plan A was started in 2017. And since then, Plan A has been like a super inspiring company for me to follow. And you've been growing like crazy. So can you tell us a bit right now, what are the numbers in terms of impact, revenue, and team size since the last time I talked to Lubomila in 2020?
Thanks for your renewed trust. We have been growing indeed very quickly. Since 2017 is the day that we founded the company, the year that we founded the company, 2020. We were already well underway in developing our product. The reality is that we are at the beginning of this growth journey. And we have been, as you said, working with more than 1,500 different companies that come from multiple verticals. We work with now the fashion industry pretty closely. We work with fleet management. We work with banking and many other aspects of the economic world, of the business world at large, that allow us to grow our impact. The ultimate goal for us is to get carbon emissions first, other impacts after, under management, which is to say to be able to count it, quantify it, and eliminate and reduce it. We are on the way to get to 1 gigaton of carbon under management. We're not exactly there yet, but we're making our way, and we're on time actually to get there by 2025. And maybe the last point that I want to make around our impact and the growth of our impact is that Plan A is also trying to decarbonize itself. And the journey of self-decarbonization and the journey of sustainability within the boundaries of the company has been absolutely pivotal so far and will be even more in the future to the brand of Planet and to who we are as a company.
How big are you in terms of team size?
We're now 150 full-time employees. We have 3 permanent offices, Berlin, Paris, and London. We have, of course, people working remotely in many more countries. So 150 full-time employees, 1,500 clients, as I said, and $27 million in funding. That should more or less situate our stage of growth for the time being.
In terms of funding, I know it's a hard time for a lot of companies in the world at the moment. Could you tell me a bit, which context do we need to be aware of about you to understand where you are at right now? Going back to anything like your childhood, your past experience, your career, what explains how you are right now at such a position with such a high commitment to change the world for the better with Plan A?
Well, to give you the context about myself, I think what's important to understand specifically about me and a thing that will motivate and shed some light around why I chose to work in impact and why I chose specifically to work on impact, starting a company that works on carbon accounting and decarbonization. You have to understand that I come from a very political background and not activism, but actual political sciences. So from the very earliest days of my upbringing, all the way to my today's years, I've been fed a lot of information around a lot of geopolitical topics, but also social topics and ultimately climate change. My early professional days were guided by how to create the Venn diagram between what I'm good at, what I love doing, and what is going to bring me a career or ensure that I will be safe at a certain economic level and clear out the first and second stages of the Maslow's pyramid. So working on this diagram essentially has taught me that my skills would be best used to communicate impact causes. So how is it that the most important causes today are probably the ones that are the least funded? How is it that certain companies that work on secondary needs are much better funded than some that work on very fundamental needs? These are some of the guiding questions that I was working with in the earlier days of my career, and that I grappled with for some times. And I was able to understand about myself that I'm able to empathize, understand what needs to be said, and empathize and understand what needs to be communicated. Using this skill set, and then choosing, if you will, the most important cause or the most important topic of our times, which is, according to me, climate change. Those two directions, if you will, collided together to create Plan A, or to create my need to begin an adventure that would be a private company adventure in order to fix one of the biggest causes of this. And that is why I also started focusing specifically on communications, specifically on different aspects of marketing, and also by extensions, of course, learning how to communicate sustainability and learning how to avoid some of the common or less common mistakes that a company can make when they start to communicate about their impact, or when they want to make a difference, when they want to influence a group of people, but don't necessarily know how to do it. That was a very long introduction, or circumvented road to my arrival as a co-founder of Plan A, and then the roles I have taken on within Plan A. But I hope that helps a little bit understand where I'm going to be coming from when I talk about these.
You are talking exactly about the roles you are taking at Plan A. So can you explain us a bit how you met Lubomila, who started this project on her own at the very beginning, and how that evolved from meeting her, working with her, becoming CMO, and then becoming co-founder?
I've known Lubomila for quite a while now. As I said, we founded the company in 2017. We go back a little bit before that, a few years before this, and the first steps of the collaboration of our journey together were very organic and very natural. We have always felt a very close alignment on the diagnosis that we have on climate change and the prognosis, the solutions that we want to propose to bring these issues to an end, or at least to mitigate them. So these were the very first steps, and the first communications we've had around Plan A and around developing a specific organization, a specific project that would help us address climate change and that would help us channel funds in the right places of climate change. This has always been the red thread of the various avatars of Plan A. And then the distribution of tasks really happens in first a skill set based kind of situation where there are so many missions to do at the beginning of a business that at the end of the day, you don't take one role, you take multiple roles. So I started, the very first thing we started with Plan A, and down the line, it's a very big element of pride, is the Plan A Academy. So we wanted to really start on the education chapter. And so we started an academy that is still to this day in existence, and that is a collection of 250 plus articles on sustainability, corporate sustainability, climate change, events, news, and recaps. So lots of different topics around how to become sustainable as a society and as a global economy and as a specific business. So we started that, right? That's what I started with, developing this aspect of Plan A, developing the content. You mentioned LinkedIn. We've been present, but also other channels, experimenting with a lot of these things. So that was the first activities that I've done. And as I said, I had always focus at these earlier stage of my career on communicating impacts. So this is what I did for a lot, and this is where I honed once we started hiring more skilled people in different spaces of the company for different roles and to fill different missions. This evolved into, as you mentioned, marketing at large, communications at large. Again, not forgetting that there were lots of other topics that we had to work with. There was once a time where we had to work on the product, where we had to work on customer success, where we had to work on commercial strategy, and I can keep going for a while. But the more your company grows, and the more the relationship evolves also with your co-founders, the more you find specific things that you want to be contributing to and that you really want to focus some of your efforts in, without losing, of course, the top eye view, the most open view that you can have on your own internal company. Today, I'm to give you an example, we have a VP of marketing that will be joining, and that is really awesome because now I'm going to be able to focus on different topics such as sustainability as Plan A, as we mentioned, or a specific aspect of branding that we need to dig in, or specific problems to be solved or jobs to be done that we might have coming up in the company. So if I sum it up very quickly, the first steps were really organic. In terms of where are you good and what can you do and how much time have you got on your hands to solve how many things, and then it becomes more and more strategic, more and more proactive thinking of how you can evolve with the company and what are the needs of the company, because at the end of the day, that's tops every other aspects of this decision.
It's good that you gave a good context of what you're doing at Plan A. Let's talk about the first part. How have you built a sustainable brand without greenwashing?
It's a vast question, but I'm happy to maybe discuss some of the principles that we have followed in order to build this brand. The first one is really the tenet that brand starts within the company. I have never really seen a marketer design a campaign or post or whatever marketing activity in contrary or against, the core values of a business or the core activities of a business. And that, I think, is a really important, maybe sounds obvious, it's not so clear, that branding activities, marketing activities, communications activities don't start with communicating on the outside. It starts by actually understanding what your core is, who you want to be, and how you want to be perceived. It's the Nietzschean ego, if you will. That's the first really important bit. And whatever flows out of your organization needs to be in sync with what is within. That, I think, is the very first, very important point, is that you build a system that is coherent within, starts within, and that is coherent on the outside with what you are trying to on the inside. That puts a lot of pressure on businesses that are, for instance, forced to do carbon accounting due to regulations, for instance. They are on a reactive basis, and therefore it's hard for them to reconcile these aspects of communication with their core mission, for instance, or with their core activities. If you think about businesses that, for example, by definition, emit a lot of carbon. Fashion, for instance, has inherent problems within the industry, and a sustainable fashion business is in need of recognizing this and is in need of understanding how this paradox is reconciled within the boundaries of this company. Are you going to change your fabric? Are you going to discontinue certain makes and models, as some famous businesses did in that space? This is the questions that one need to ask. The second, I think, really important tenet is that the brand and the message and the feeling that you exude as a company is in very large part due to the team that you build. So you set some guidelines, and you, as a company grows, as our company grows, we hire more and more team members spread across more locations, doing more and more specialized activities. And the culture aspect of that hiring and making sure that literally every team member has can get behind the message that you're writing, can understand what you're trying to say, and in our specific impact world, agrees to some extent with your theory of change, so that they can then be the messenger and that they can then be the ambassadors of what you're trying to say. This is an absolutely core, or pivotal activity that you need to take, understand under the prism of branding.
Hey, just a 10-second break to tell you. I just released a free video presentation to explain the 3 key strategies I use to get 7,500 change makers to follow me on LinkedIn and to reach more than 1 million people this year with my posts. It's free. Just follow the link in the description to download it.
So those are 2 really, I think, important parts, which is working your messaging within the core, making sure that the people that are working towards these activities, towards this goal, are behind this and can communicate and understand it very clearly. You can look at how Plan A communicates on LinkedIn. You mentioned LinkedIn briefly. My co-founder, Lubomila, is a thought leader on this space, and she has also inspired a lot of the team members to also develop their thought leadership in their specific role. We have team members that are speaking at coding conferences, green coding conferences, or that are discussing their specific areas of focus in the context of sustainability, of course. So adding this human layer to what the messaging is and giving people the tool to actually do this and helping them on the channels where they can communicate, this is absolutely key to me. And I'll give you one last part to this answer, or one last part of my answer is transparency is a tool to allow external stakeholders to verify your commitments. And if you don't give that tool to the people that you are trying to communicate with, all of a sudden this becomes very complicated for people to trust you. And that is how we take transparency. It's not just because people need to know the numbers. Yes, of course, this is a good thing to do. But the transparency needs to be coupled with the tools for people to check and the tools for people to understand what your activities have been and how are you actually being coherent inside and outside of what you're doing, and with your even mission and raison d'être and overall vision. So this is a few aspects of the ways in which we have built our brand and the way in which we have been endeavoring to be respectful of sustainability and to be respectful of the state of advancement of where we are, and the way to be truthful with our audiences, the customers, the people that are not our customers but that are interested in our educational material, for instance, and other commentators or internal stakeholders that we have.
So starting at the core, growing a brand as a team, and transparency. I have a few questions regarding these three. First of all, if you have to start building a brand in terms of workshops, brand is usually what people say about you or your company or yourself when you're not in the room. So it usually comes with certain values. Or what are core workshops and framework that you always run when you want to build your brand? Are you talking about brand archetypes? How do you communicate that to the team? Is it part of the onboarding process every time? If you start a new company tomorrow, what are the workshops you're going to run to define your brand? And then what are the steps you're going to start setting up to make sure the team gets it?
I have two ways of answering this. One way to answer this is that I think as a marketer and as a brand, but also as a co-founder and as someone who is interested in getting better overall, you have to be playful with the different tools that you have. And by tools here, I mean Miro and other tools, but I also mean the different types of ways that you can get to your brand. There's the why, what, how workshop. This not the one that is my favorite. There is the mountain of tomorrow. There is the Heisenberg matrix. All of these are different exercises, mind exercise, Venn diagrams, mind exercises that you can do and to help you visualize and express your brand in a certain way. So I think having this flexibility to understand what the context requires and who needs to input. So are you a 5-person company where everyone can be in the room? Are you already a 200 something people company where this cannot be a completely open and fully everyone's in the room process? So you need to understand where you're picking up this train, or when you're getting on this bus, because that influences, I think, a lot of the ways you're going to need to gather the input that you are going to need in order to phrase things in a way that is understandable. And that takes me to the second way of answering the question, which is maybe a little bit more practical. I think it's absolutely fundamental to be able to state your purpose in a vision statement, a one-liner statement, in a paragraph statement, in a one-pager, and in an essay. And this, for me, is the exercise that really shows that the brand is crisp enough that you are able to, in so few words, capture all of the different aspects that make the essence. It's like building a perfume, if I can make this metaphor. What are all, is in that tagline all of the very subtle elements that you're trying to say? And have you thought specifically of each word, and what are all of the meanings that it has? And can you boil it down to this? All the way to, is your brand so deep and integrated that you are able to write a 5,000 word, essay, can be more, can be less, obviously, about the way that this brand expresses itself and what it means for the goals that you have, what it means for the means that you're going to use for the goals that you have, and what it's going to mean in the ways that you're going to work. So I think having these different ways of zooming in and zooming out and going into depth and seeing something from a distance and still understanding the essence of the brand, this is my I think verification exercise that I do. To your point about the team, as I started this part by saying that the team that you build is the team that will communicate your brand and that will define it to a large extent. And so the corollary to this is that you need to capture the feedback from your team. And you need to be able to make the brand not a rigid construct with very hard things to do, but more a playground for people to operate in. And so by making sure that the team understands, but also is behind the values, understanding if they feel good about asking things about the brand, or if they need to understand specific aspects of the brand. Also seeing team members adding certain details to your brand that I didn't do, for instance.
Like what, for example?
Well, if I told you all of the Easter eggs that we leave, it wouldn't be fun anymore. But I'll just give you an example. Last year, one of our team members built a landing page for a partnership that we had, and at the very bottom, written in a hexacode that corresponds to the number of particles of CO2 in the air is written like, made with care by Plan A, for instance. And this is a little message. And where does it correspond to the brand? It's because we are very caring, we're very respectful, and we're very scientific. These are three aspects of our brand and our tone of voice. And this little, it's a little detail. I'm not sure who saw it, and I don't even want to check. But this is what makes the depth of that brand, right? If you have like integrated details in the way that you design, if you have little hints or little winks from one end to another of your brand system, this is when you know that people understand what you're trying to convey as a brand and have the ownership to the brand that allows them to actually make it even cooler than you thought it was, right? And that is what I think brings the depth of a brand to a brand, and that is what I think also makes all the salt and all the interest of being into this branding topic, because it's a fractal. It can go in so many directions. If you're able to build a strong playground for people to operate in, and it's well understood, and people can feel good about participating in these principles that you've set, I think that's where you're onto the right thing, and you're verifying internally that your brand is also viable, if you will, on the outside.
Super interesting what you said about the one-liner, one page, or one essay, which is something I never heard. Can you remind me again the name of the two workshops you said, or frameworks you said you use?
Right. So I mean I have a lot of fun exploring
in your playful box. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting also at today's time with a lot of remote tools that have been developed due to COVID, with a lot of capabilities we've been able to develop with AI or with other cool buzzwords that I'm not going to use here. But we have an opportunity, and we have the luck to be very playful with these tools. We don't have one typewriter and that's all you get, right? We can do a lot of different things. And so maybe on that tooling level, again, I'm going back and forth. It's really important, I think, for someone to just try things out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work so well. But you're staying on the edge of how you can get to your answers that you're trying to get. And so to maybe say again what I've mentioned, there's the Mountain of Tomorrow, which is one that I've discovered not so long ago, and it's very visual. It's a mountain. And the top of the mountain is the goal. The other mount is the ultimate goal. You have some milestone. You have some climbing tooling, which are your tools. And, it's a whole metaphor around how are we going to climb this mountain together. And I think it's really, I think most people in the workshop room, they instinctively know where they want to get to. They just need the way to work to gather in the input. This is not so easy. To be able to say it with confidence, to be able to share information from one place to another, and to be able to solve maybe disagreements, right? Like some people will want to do one thing or the other. Should we have more meetings, less meetings? The typical question. You need to have a method to solve for this, again, paradox. It doesn't mean that they're irreconcilable. It means that you need to find ways and make a decision to reconcile these things. And these workshop frameworks, I think, are different ways to angle a conversation in order to achieve this. And maybe another framework that I think is cool is the how, wow, and now. And again, it's just a funky marketing word to say Eisenhower a prioritization matrix, right? We're just trying here to prioritize. And how is like pretty cool but pretty hard. Now is pretty easy to do and pretty effective. And wow is like, okay, this is gonna be like really easy to do and like but also it's gonna be very, very impactful. So it's just a prioritization matrix that doesn't say exactly its name, but the goal is to really, you know, create that space, as I said, of confidence and of communication and of essentially problem solving.
Super cool. These are two frameworks I didn't know, and I love frameworks. So you sent me about this first part, some do's and don'ts about if you want to build a sustainable brand without greenwashing. Can you explain them a bit to me?
Sure. The first one is really to set the stage to capture feedback from your team. This is these workshops, this is these meeting moments, but I think it's also a culture of, you know, letting people challenge you. It's not so easy always. Sometimes you just want to go fast and with what you have in mind, but it's really important, you know, to be honestly, I won't say challenged and not pretend to be challenged, but also take in some of the challenges that come from your team. And I think this creates you know, an important information channel for any manager. Don't assume that your brand is cool because you think it's cool. And I think it's quite important because I cherish very much the brand of Plan A and what we have managed to build as a team, and these aspects that I mentioned, the transparency, the truthfulness. These are things that I'm proud of.
When you say everyone, just to make sure here, when you say everyone, are you talking about the people in your team, or are you talking about people?
I mean, good question. You should always have in mind the audience that you're targeting, right? So then you prioritize it. So who are you trying to be truthful to? Who are you trying to communicate to? And, you know, essentially, why are you trying to communicate to these people? So that's this very vague everyone. The brand topic is really high level. So it concerns most people who are going to come in contact with you at any given point. And I'll give you maybe, you know, an example from everyday life is if you take a very, very global brand, but that you don't necessarily use that often, or you don't really know what they do. Let's take, you know, a good old German brand, Siemens. You know who they are. You can tell what their brand is, kind of more or less. But are you interacting with it? Do you need to actually interact with it? Not really. You're in some parts, there are potential targets, but in other parts, you're not yet ready to engage. So their game in terms of making the brand visible, cool, is a little bit different from ours. Maybe they have stakeholders that are customers they want to retain today. So, you know, a general example to say that you need to think about everyone, but also not really. And so when I say everyone, I really mean, you know, that one-liner is for everyone. That deep essay that you've written maybe is not for everyone. Maybe it's for the people working specifically on the brand, for them to really understand how they're going to be able to utilize it when they design a product, for instance. So, you know, maybe again, to continue on this topic, everyone may also be another team. So, you know, you may think in the marketing department that you have made a great job at communicating your values to everyone, but someone in the engineering department has never seen this page that you have talked about because they've joined more recently, for instance. So you can't assume that everyone gets it because they're part of the company. And you can't assume that everyone gets it because they have liked a post or they follow you, for instance. And not only get it, but also like it. So making sure that you do something that you're really proud of, but that it also kind of resonates, it's an important thing to make sure when you're building a brand.
Hey, before you jump to the next part of this episode, one quick info. If you don't want to miss the best strategies for entrepreneurs like you, sign up for my newsletter with a link in the description. You will receive a summary of advice from each episode, Get personal recommendations based on your startup stage and industry. And you will also receive my most useful growth and LinkedIn marketing strategies. Just follow the link in the description to sign up. Back to the next part of this interview. In marketing and in business innovation in general, if you want to be successful, you need to be able to tackle the whole funnel and to think at all the different stages, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Let's talk about the second part. How do you integrate branding as part of the whole company, and especially the part about how do you include the science as part of the brand, because this is one of the unique thing about Plan A.
So I think brand is both very exposed and very powerful assets for a business. And in order for this value to be preserved and expanded on, the team needs to be part of it. And the team is not the marketing team or just the external facing team. It's everyone in the team, because it starts not at the color scheme, but it starts at the value level. So you know that you have a problem with your business if any and all team members is not able to name the values, or going a little bit farther, if the company is a bit maybe smaller, the mission statement, these core elements of the brand. At the end of the day, the people that we work with, the people that Plan A has hired, they joined for this. They join for the values that we stand by, the issues that we're solving, the ways in which we try to solve them. So making the brand shared responsibilities and have everyone understand that they are stewards of this brand by helping them communicate on LinkedIn on the really great news, but by also giving them guidelines on how to do this in the way that will empower their message and empower Plan A's brand. And if the alignment is there, it makes it all the more easy for a communications team to do this.
How do you help them communicate that properly on LinkedIn, for example?
Right. So we internally have processes that first of all define. We don't force anyone to use our tone of voice, but we make sure that everyone understands Plan A's tone of voice. Luckily, we are able to communicate in a way that is, or that's our goal, right? And I'm going to get to the science part in a second, is to communicate in a way that's understandable and exciting and solutions driven about climate change. A lot of our team members, but also beyond our team members, are looking for this kind of messaging and this kind of way to communicate about climate action. So by giving them posts and giving them visuals and giving them suggestions on how to communicate, this is already a big step. This is already a big step because we're trying to overcome the challenge of time. Not everyone has or takes the time to use social media or to use other channels, for that matter, to communicate about what they do. People have different channels of communication, but we make sure that everyone has got this package for the milestones that we pass, the funding being one. And we encourage people to post and give them this opportunity. So that's the good part. That's the cool part. Then there's another level of maybe a bit more policing that doesn't overstep the boundaries of private channels, but that does make sure that if a communication is in any way part of Plan A's general communication channels, they follow this time very, very strict guidelines. I'm talking about a 1,500 words glossary. I'm talking about a full tone of voice document. I'm talking about a full, information hierarchy and communication points, do's and don'ts in the vocabulary, what we use, what we don't use. So this is like very precise, hexadecimals for every colors, obviously. So this is how we become an example for all of the people that also want to communicate in a similar way or in a fairly aligned way. So these are maybe two ways that we make sure that everyone feels connected to the brand, everyone understands what's going on in the brand, and everyone has an opportunity to be a part of this brand and to use the shine of the brand for them if they do so desire, and if they do so want to communicate similar message. So you can go on LinkedIn and look at the employee communications and see that. And that's really big. That's really exciting for me because it's not just about people posting. It's about the fact that they enjoy posting what we post. And that for me is really cool and really interesting.
You make people join you for these values. I love what you described here when you said, at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're giving a media pack to your employees. That was my guess from what I saw on LinkedIn recently with, following your company in the Bomila, is that every time you have big milestones, then I see sometimes different types of visuals for the same milestones. And this is something that I really encourage everyone listening to this podcast to do if you have employees, is if you want to help them. Not everybody is a super good communicator, and a lot of people want to communicate. But when you're doing PR, this is what you do to journalists. Even to journalists, you give them a material, which is the media pack, which they can take and share and or get inspired by. And this is exactly what you're doing with your employees. So you are creating, when you have milestones, creating some visuals and some communication that they can use and share if they want to. So this is something that I find fantastic. What did LinkedIn bring you in terms of results for the company when it comes to people joining you? Because I remember already 3 years ago, Lubomila saying that, you had 300, or I don't remember his numbers, but a super high amount of applicants for when you were looking for some developers. Mm-hmm. Are you still reaping the fruits of your hard work on communication on LinkedIn at the moment, the way you were before? Or is it even more now because of what's happening?
More than ever would be the answer today, because you get a compounded effect actually when you have a lot of followers on the business account, on the thought leadership piece, on the co-founder numbers of followers, but also on the employee numbers. So the more voices you have, the more effects or the more visibility you're going to be able to generate. The more time you spend working on this, the more each of these voices will have also specialized followers. If we go back to the specialists becoming thought leaders on their specialty, the more results you're actually going to get. So by results we mean applications, all sorts of opportunity, of people that want to work for Plan A, with Plan A, partnering with Plan A, that want to join the team, that want to also, do business with us, that want to do carbon accounting. So there's all of these, there's all this rich tapestry living on LinkedIn, and that organic chapter that we're describing plays a very large role. And I would just go back to your first point with the media pack to the team, because I think we're not reinventing the wheel by doing this. Where I think we managed to get some success is that people use it. And I know for a fact that a challenge of a lot of the brand teams and the marketers out there is to get people to do it. And it's important to understand here what challenges you need to help your team members overcome to post. You mentioned the shyness. So, I'm not legitimate to communicate. There's already a lot of voices. I've never done this before. So there's this first hoop to pass, if you will, for an individual to start posting, get started on posting. And then there's also the other factors. There's the time factor that I alluded to earlier, which when you talk to someone who's, anyone, a sales executive, a product manager, an engineer, their focus in their job is not to keep an eye on LinkedIn or to have it open on a tab and to see who's talking about you and how. Their job is to do something else. And so in order to overcome this, you need to also enable them to do that quickly. And by giving them, back to the brand, the safety that what they're going to communicate is not going to be wrong or is not going to be criticized or is part of a greater herd protection type situation, then you're also overcoming these different factors. So making sure that people use the package and making sure that you're solving for the right challenges that prevent people from using the package is really important. And giving people the will and the motivation to use your brand because they believe in it. And I think at the bottom of the answer of this question is, if you work for a company that you don't really believe in, or you don't really dig the mission, well, why would you post that to your followers and to the people that you have made connections to? You wouldn't really do that. If it's bang on your area of expertise, or on what you want to discuss, or on the things you want to change in society or in the world or in the economy or in your business, then it becomes really interesting, and it becomes a really valuable channel to explore and find all of these innovations and open up conversation with people that are innovating in your space.
If this podcast helps you, please do me a huge favor and click on the follow button on your podcast platform. It helps to grow this podcast faster and to convince the most impactful entrepreneurs of the world to join me in these interviews, so that you and other entrepreneurs can learn from them. Thank you for sharing that part. I had cut you when you wanted to discuss the science part. So
Right.
How do you integrate science as part of the brand at Plan A?
So science is has always been, since the very beginning of Plan A, the fuel, if you will, of the way that we understand our role within the climate change. Respecting the principles, even when it's not that convenient, and surrounding yourself with people that speak this language and that are able to verbalize the issues in ways that are maybe too complex for a greater audience, but that is very thorough. It's the essay part, is very important to understand how far you need to go and what you need to do and what actions you need to take in order to become efficient. If you look at the results of impact projects at large, the statistics, I think, is 85%, and we can debate for a long time how this is measured. 85% of failed projects that don't get to the end of the project, or projects that don't have the expected impact that was defined at the beginning of the project. And I think this is really important to understand when you are trying to have an impact, is that there is a very high probability that you're headed for failure. So how do you make sure that you reduce the risk for failure? And it's really by working at the basis of your thinking process, and what are the deeper reasons of why you're working on a topic? What are the principles that you want to follow when it comes to defining the means? And what is the end that you're trying to get to? So all of this, we use the principles of another methodology, theory of change, which allows you to make as clear as possible from the get-go what is the diagnosis of the problem you're defining, what is the ideal state you want to get to, and what are the actions you're going to take to actually do this. And it sounds like a very basic thing to do, but it has to be grounded in science in our case, because if you are not going to respect the hard and its physics truth and geological truth is of the planetary boundaries, or the things that are limiting the problem you're scoping the problem you're trying to do, then the chances of you not focusing on the right things are becoming a lot higher. So that's for the why we need science in the way that we communicate, but also, not just communicate, but act and decide on what are the specific activities we're doing for decarbonization. And the way that we do this, as I said, is by surrounding ourselves with these people. We are the translators. We're the mouthpiece, if you will, of part of this community. We have a scientific board, for instance, on the very practical ways of how do you surround yourself with scientists. We have a scientific board that has some of the best institutions, or represented for some of the best institutions for climate science and for climate, understanding what is going on and what are the different solutions towards this. So that's one very practical, to the bone, how do you integrate science. But now, to the communications bit, because the $1 million question is, how do you translate, right, the scientific issues? Well, by getting them involved in the messaging, and by finding innovative ways to define arena again that will allow for this deeper conversation. I'm a very big believer that in order to understand something as complex as decarbonization, you do need to take the time to understand it, read about it, have discussions with people that are experts. And by providing the space for this conversation to happen, that can be white papers that we've created, that can be Ask Me Anything to a Scientist events that we have organized in the past. This can be defining a glossary. You can go on our website with a big list of definitions of what are the words we use, why we use them, and what they exactly mean. So that creates as many arenas for the public, that everyone to understand in depth, if they want to, the situation, or at a glance what the idea of the situation in truth is. I can discuss this a little bit more, and that will allow you to become a smart commentator and smart diagnose giver of what is going on, and ground the solutions you're designing into this very precise problem setting as set by science. So I hope that was clear-ish, but it's a very, very pivotal topic for companies to understand, and to understand why this kind of scientific aspect is important. It's not just because these people have PhDs, and how this can happen, because it is not so easy from an operational point of view to convince these communities and the business community to also communicate and to work together on more solutions.
You mentioned the scientific board. What's its role exactly, and how does it interact? At which step does it interact? I'd like to understand the role and how it interacts with different part of your company or your product.
So the scientific board is an organ that we have created a couple of years ago now, that, as I said, includes members from the scientific, but also the business community and the decarbonization community, to give us support on defining and staying at the edge of defining the problem, and designing for the right solutions that will be in line with, as I said, the physics, the physics parts of the reality of the problem we are facing. So these are the big missions, if you will, of this board, and this is why we felt the need to interact with the community and to feel the need to formalize also an arena for us to discuss these topics. The way that they help us is on the company-wide level, on a team-wide level, and on an individual level. The company-wide level is the board coming to the team. We do an on-site, and we have different workshops that we want to discuss with these different expertise that we have sitting around the table at this board. We discussed last time what is the relationship, for instance, between carbon and money. How are these two notions related in the context of conducting a company, in the context of decarbonizing your company? What does that actually mean? So that's one of the different subjects that we've covered. I'm not going to go through all of them. On the team specific level, this is feedback loops. So these, of course, they're quite busy, but we get a chance to interact with them and to soundboard a lot of our ideas, be that on the strategic level or on maybe a bit more operational levels. The sustainability plan of Plan A being a prime example of how this expresses itself, where we work with our own expertise, we make our plans, and we involve some of these board members to participate as much as they can to the conversation, to the feedback, and participate also to the peer review that we do on these documents. So once we feel that we have created something that is on par with the level of science that we want, we have also borrowed this concept of peer reviewing from this community, from the academia community, to make sure that we have external elements of feedback, of inputs, that will help us refine also the way that we write and what we write about, and how do we get the most precise solution statements so that we avoid as much as possible failure. And then the final point is on the individual level, where we have an absolute will within this company to build people that will lead, as I said, their areas of specialty. I gave the example of one of our engineer principals, Karsten Windler, who is speaking on conferences on green IT, on green coding. That's one example. I'm speaking to you now on the topic of sustainable communications. So having the possibility for these people to also ask on an individual level and stay up to date on an individual level with these people that are sometimes grappling with some of the most advanced research on these specific topics. This is also something that they have committed to, and that they help us do and help us train on. There's so much more we're going to be doing, and there's a lot of opportunity for us to do a lot more, but I hope that gives an overview.
Yes. So from what I understand is like these are not full-time employees of Plan A.
The board members, the scientific advisory board members are external people. So they're individuals that work at high level in institutions, as I said, that are either to do with the economic world or the climate science world. And they help us shape and define from an external perspective, and from where they sit, help us shape and define how Plan A does what, and in order to solve which question. So this is the kind of most general way that they contribute. And it's an extremely valuable asset for us to have when we design the product, when we design marketing campaign, communications campaign, or when we take a step back and think about how do we understand climate change, climate action, decarbonization.
What are the do's and don'ts you have on this topic?
I think one of the do is have an enormous amount of patience when you are editing your content. The levels of precisions that you need to get to make sure that you are at a high scientific standard is more than the average, if you will, proofreading or average editing. It has to do with unit systems. It has to do with the precisions of words you use. It has to do with making so many aspects of the way you describe problems and solutions very, very precise. And as a marketer, you also need to make space for the goals of the way that you create copy, right? Be that generate interest for a certain topic or bring clarity on another. You also have your desired outcomes as a copywriter, as a content creator. So having this back and forth between someone that will have a very, very sharp eye for these scientific details and someone that will have a sharp eye for SEO, for instance, this is really important. And it's really important to have a system in the company who will be the final kind of who needs to sign off on this copy. And ideally, it's two people that can, just agree on the fact that it holds a certain standard and that it serves a certain purpose. And that, again, the team members from different teams can both get behind the statement. So that's quite an important do in my view. In terms of don'ts, it becomes repetitive sometimes. A company grows. There's more and more people that join. You have documentation. The documentation becomes more and more fluffy. So some people don't have the awareness necessarily that this is the way that you need to use the brand, or this is the sign-off you need to get, or that this is where the logo should go, and this is this color that you should use. Of course, some of these things will be set by templates and other systems, but some others will not be. The way that I see, again, brand is to be a playground rather than a very specific thing to achieve. So it's more about respecting codes within a certain area of work rather than just applying stupidly a hexa. So if you don't do this well, and if you assume bad intent, for instance, or if you police it very negatively, you can become a turnoff for your own brand and for your own work. And someone that was very originally motivated to respect the science now all of a sudden doesn't want to respect the science, or not doesn't want to respect the science, but doesn't want to take the time because they know that you're going to be doing it in their stead and without telling them and in a way that's not constructive. So you need to be the facilitator again for the way that you are going to communicate your brand. And you, to some extent, have to be aware of your internal stakeholders and the way that you're going to market that system to them. And if you're able to show very clear benefits from this, look at how the platform is now perfectly unified by respecting these codes, then you're creating value for the stakeholders to actually follow this. And they see why you're trying to do this. And they see why you're adding this subscript to or asking them to do exactly down to this level of precision changes to their work. So it's a delicate balance of policing and making it desirable and doing it in a smart way, and a way that is also very thorough.
How do you police that positively? My feeling, my guess here, as you mentioned, it's about explaining the why and then showing the how and then letting the others correct it. I remember one of the best mentors I had during my PhDs. My PhD was exactly doing that, showing me when I was giving him a text saying, hey, if you write that like that, it doesn't work because of this. Here's a way you could do it, for example. And then he would let me go back and then come back with, an iteration based on what he said. Is that what you mean here by the way you're proceeding?
Yeah, to some extent. I will describe it the way that I understand it, but it's quite similar, I feel. The first thing, if you're going to expect someone to apply a code of conduct or anything of that regard, the first thing that you have as a responsibility as the organization setting it is information. So you have to have, as part of your onboarding, as part of the first communications that you have with the new team members or existing team members, if you're introducing a new framework, is that making it very clear. The information is there. These are the things that are the most important. Here's an info session. You can watch a video we've recorded, and it's in the dedicated Slack channel for everyone to see and be informed. That's the really first step, right? That's hygiene. That's the easy part in a way. The harder bit is what comes after, is how do you enforce the system? And that's your question. How do you not become this, stickler that is just reviewing on the copy? Well, there's two things that I think are quite important. One is to have relays. It's not just one person that is the sheriff in town of this thing. It's impossible. It's impossible for that person to not become crazy and lose all their friends at work. But it's also not functional in terms of growth and scaling. So you need to have people that really understands, as you say, the why and the how. And that are distributed in the places that are going to be exposed to these kinds of risks. So within the product team, we have worked closely with product manager in order to discuss the way that copy would be written to face clients. And this is, a discussion, because there's different goals for this copy. It needs to be very UI friendly, but also scientific. It has to play a few different, has to have a few different attributes. So making sure that, and that's just one example with product, that you have different team members that are on your same kind of level of, I need to make this in the right square, and I need to make sure that it's written in the British English, for instance. These kinds of things, you need people to be to act as a team for that, for sure. the other part of this enforcement is you need to protect the people that make the mistake and the people that enforce the mistake by a process. So a simple thing that I created and I thought was quite successful is to create a template for that call outs, quote unquote call outs. And if you're able to write something that is not passive aggressive, that people can actually use, and that people know that it's not their words, but it's someone else's words, it's that brand guy's words, then they feel a lot more comfortable kind of enforcing this, because they don't take the risk of, being the sticklers or being the annoying people, even if they are feeling super annoyed, right? So you're avoiding two things. You're avoiding the fact that it's only one person every time writing a message and losing their patience. And you're avoiding that the people that actually want to do something good, which is to enforce the brand, are exposed, if you will, by these things that can be perceived negativity. So transforming that negativity into something actually a little bit fun. I don't know if you have heard of this system, but in order to enforce security and that people close their laptops, if you see that someone has an open laptop, you can write donut on it, and they have to get donuts for people because they breached the security. Stupid, but also efficient, because, people then remember this kind of thing. It's not, a bad, terrible thing that's happening to you, but at the same time, it keeps people, in line, and they remember that when they have to do it once or twice. So I think it's about kind of innovating on this fun law enforcement and not really taking it too seriously, but at the same time giving the tools of the people to say, behind this nice way to say it, you need to remember to do these things.
I like the donut example. Let's talk about the third part of this interview, which is, let's go through the funnel of acquisition, awareness, acquisition, activation, revenue, and retention. And let's explore how you actually include that brand as part. Let's start with, awareness, which is making people aware of your brand. How do you apply your branding principle guidelines, which is discussed in this part?
If we go back to the basis of the conversation, is why do you even need a brand, and why do you need it to be sustainable and scientific, and how do you actually achieve to give your brand these attributes? It's really important for, I think, in general, a marketing department to make these intents very clear, and to make the derived benefit for each team very clear and very, very spelled out in your project plan. For a commercial side, it can be divided in this funnel, and starting with awareness, I think it's really about creating your first feeling. They say that opening the door is 50% of the work. I'm not sure sales executive agree with this, but I think it's definitely a big part of the goal that you're trying to achieve as a marketing team, is to be in the radar of the relevant stakeholders that you have. And making this visible at the awareness level has a very satisfactory feeling, I would say, and has a very empowering effect on not just the marketing team, but the company as a whole. So how many people have seen your brand? It's a really interesting and a really hard metrics to actually get to. If you work like we do on PR, on press relations, you have systems to estimate the amount of people that have viewed this or that mention. You have also LinkedIn that we have discussed that has a lot of information. You have your website metrics, and if you sum all of these awareness metrics up, you can get to really interesting and impressive numbers quite quickly. And I see that as a fuel to making the whole marketing machine grow. In terms of how it brings value, there's also the concept that the numbers game has to be played in marketing. I'm very much in favor of qualitative approach when it comes to content creation, for example. But there is a calculation in there. There's a multiplication effect or a divider effect, if you will, of How many people over the total people that have seen your brand are going to be commercially interesting lead for you? And that is what you need to make very aware, your other teams and your marketing team, is that you are basically with awareness setting up a very large funnel. And the risk with that is that you have a lot of people that are not so relevant to you. And the brand is actually the filter or the gate for people to understand if it's their funnel or if it's an interesting funnel for them or not. And so on that, if you use these words that are very familiar to commercial, and if you explain it this way, I feel that it becomes very clear that your brand is both a catcher of interest and a filter for you to not have to spell out that you are a carbon accounting company, that you focus on decarbonization, that you follow science, and that you have a product and other aspects of your brand that you want to make clear as a stakeholder goes down into the funnel.
How do you do that on your, like, let's say on the acquisition part, you say when the brand works as a filter, how do you do that effectively at plan A? Do you have a few examples of how you apply that on your website to talk about this, like brand values like secure, safety, or science?
Yeah. I mean, if you go on our website, you'll see that it's divided. The menu is pretty simple. The menu is how do we understand ourselves? How do we understand the different problems to be solved? How we solve them, and how can you learn about all of this? So you remember the details, the little details that make a brand a killer brand. This is the lowest level of brand hints. And if your brand is solid, everything going up all the way to your website structure is coherent with that brand. And so when it comes to acquisition, so let's call it also what some marketers calls the consideration stage. You're now not trying to be on the radar. You're trying to be comparatively more to the center of the radar of other competitors. So the goal of that, wherever this happens, the channel wherever this happens, and the copy and the content that you put forward at this moment has a different goal than the awareness goal. And that is where, for example, giving this example of the nav bar, you can make more intense clearer. And for example, in the case of science, you can go. There's a page that talks about Plan A sustainability. There's the glossary that I mentioned. There is the academy that I mentioned. There are white papers. There's policy notes, and this is in your face. You cannot really miss it if you're browsing the website. And that is just a way to live, if you will, the brand. And we're not trying to display science because it's part of our brand. We're actually doing science stuff because, the brand flows from these activities. It's not the other way around. So here, how do you make sure that your brand is relevant to this stage? Is by making these brand attributes very, very clear. Are you a dynamic, modern, product-led brand, or are you a lot more on traditional ways of working? There's many different ways that you can define this, but that is where your brand starts to work on a positioning of where you're standing and not in a vacuum. And that is where you have to think very carefully as a marketer, what are you going to put forward as part of your brand? If I take a metaphor of a human, you can only wear one sweater. Which one is it going to be? Or people put messages on t-shirts. You can only wear one t-shirt today. So what is your t-shirt? That's your one-liner. When it comes to your website, well, you're kind of showing the wardrobe. So do you have 3 t-shirts? What are your 3 t-shirts you want to focus on? And you don't have more than that. And it's really important to not have more than that, because then you get confusing and people don't know what is your brand, what is your style for this kind of poetic metaphor here. So you should be answering questions, at this stage with your brand.
I think the very good thing about that is, let's take an example. Like, I like the fact that the filtering is working here to attract and convert the people who will actually be resonating with the let's say the hints you give them there. So your academy, the science path, the white paper, when you make that in their face when they arrive, they will understand, okay, plan A is actually, if I want to greenwash, if I want to actually, because there are thousands of companies now offering now decarbonization. And if I just want an easy way to do something, just to get some numbers to share and to basically, greenwash, which is the definition, plan A is not probably going to be for me. So I think that's a great way to proceed.
And I think you use a great example with the greenwashing. For instance, Plan A stands on that scientific piece, on the data-driven piece. These are very important aspects of our brand that lead us to the attribute of decarbonization first product. So the work that we do, the focus that we have, is on eliminating and avoiding emissions rather than compensating them. This has a lot of scientific implication, a lot of methodological implications, but we make that clear at this stage, So when you get at every stage, but when you are someone that needs carbon accounting or that needs to do decarbonization, that is when you're going to need to know what are the different variables that differentiate one provider from another. And that is where, as you say, we make it pretty clear that if you want to base yourself purely on qualitative feedback or anecdotal intelligence, this is probably not the right company for you. Or if you want to purely buy offsets and jump on the label that is designed by an organization, this is probably not the right place for you. However, if you have this specific need, and it's as details in the jobs to be done on our website, if you need help with data collection cleanup, if you need help with strategy planning on your decarbonization, if you need to productize your reporting, that's where we can probably serve you. And I want to make sure that it's not a question only of morals. Of course, there is a moral element to everything that we do in this space. And of course, we are against voluntary greenwashing. There's another risk, which is involuntary greenwashing. And you want to be really accurate on this. And you want to make sure, again, going back on explaining the why it makes sense to not do it. It's not just because it's a bad thing to do, it's because it's a dumb thing to do. It doesn't make sense to do it,
What's an example of involuntary greenwashing?
Well, I mean, they go by the hundreds because I'll give you an example. When you do a carbon accounting report, you have a few data points. You need, at the best, to get activity data. So these are the amounts of kilowatts that you have spent, the amounts of kilometers, physical data on your activities. That allows you to get to the most precise estimates of your carbon emissions. Second best is the so-called spend-based methods, where you look at your invoices and your bills. And if you don't have that, you can also use national averages. So this is your business of your size in that space, on average, will travel X amounts of kilometers by train. And you use this. This is an imprecise number. And the problem, if you will, is not that these people got started and don't have the data yet. They're working on it. The problem is that they're going to make a post saying, like, we've done a report. We are very, very happy about this report. And, we're done until next year. Because that's how they understand sustainability within their space. And they need training and expertise and know-how to transform this one-time reporting approach, which, qualifies as greenwashing if your message is really overly positive, and instead move towards integrating as part of the core elements of who they are what the actions of decarbonization would be. So it's a complicated way of saying, again, the same thing that we started with, which is your brand is only the byproduct at the end, the refined byproducts of what you do and who you are. And if you don't do what you want to put in your brand, then you have a fundamental incoherence that will sooner or later be seen, and that will sooner or later be illegal, as the EU just passed a law against wrongful climate neutrality claims. So either you get with the program, or someone's going to get you in this program kicking and screaming. And where we need to do some work, and where I think there's a big need for support for businesses, is to conduct this journey in the most truthful and effective way. And that is where our red line on the data, backing yourself with data. That is why the scientific, you back yourself on physical realities of the world. And that is why my point on coherence and the brand intern, core, team, and then external take all their meaning, because those are the building blocks that will make it all that easier for you to define your nav bar, or define your colors through a workshop, or your all the other aspects of the brands that you want to define, and that will then in turn influence back all of the other teams.
To talk about the next steps, can you explain a bit about what's your process actually at Plan A? So to talk about how you are actually now, we talked about awareness, acquisition, the website, people discover your brand, people come on your website. What are the next steps until they become clients of Plan A? And how do you integrate the brand and KPIs there?
Right. So in terms of KPI, I think the brand, when it goes past the stages of sales, has a very integrated meaning with churn when you talk about commercial, and customer satisfaction if you talk about it from a customer's perspective. And where the brand needs to or the perception of the brand from people that are now clients, and that you are trying to upsell and still convince and manage to maintain on the platform. This audience should really get deeper and deeper and deeper in the brand, and be more and more and more convinced by these basic building blocks that we have. And if I do qualitative interviews with users, for example, when I'm trying to get some more information on the perception of our brand and the perception of our product and services, I need to be clear on how much of that brand is understood, what is it understood to be, and do these people feel that this is a glue to them? Do they feel that they are also behind this? And that is really important, especially in sustainability part of the activity. If my brand is focused on being accurate and precise and scientific, and the person that bought the software has a need to be scientific and precise and data driven, they need to understand at each step that they take that this commitment that we have, and that they understood to be brand, in the profane way to say it, but that it's actually something that defines the way we've built the product, or something that defines the way we've organized the navigation, or something that we've used to define the different services and the features that we provide over other features that we want to develop in the future. I feel that this reinforces their experience with Plan A, and it makes them even more than they were before, sticking to us to be their pilot fish in this climate change navigation and in this decarbonization navigation. So I hope that was somewhat clear, but maybe one takeaway that I want to emphasize on as well is that the journey, the funnel, the brand, it doesn't stop at the conversion. And that would be a very big mistake to actually take it from the external all the way to the inside, but it rather starts from the very, very inside, your team, then to your clients, then to your prospects, and then to the people that need to hear about you that you don't know yet. And it's not the other way around. So I think it's an important aspect of branding, the exercise of creating a brand to consider.
In terms of user interviews, you mentioned, so you do these user interviews. How often do you do them? Or
As often as I can, really. So we have good processes in place that allow us to chat with or request or ask for conversation with clients. At the end of the day, we have a lot of conversation with clients because they have a lot of different needs. We have interaction. We have a wonderful customer success team that manages these journeys towards sustainability. So we do get a very dynamic feedback loop. We do organize on a monthly basis conversations where different team members can actually ask questions to customers, and those questions get consolidated, and then we have people, professional interview conductor, or people that are trained in conducting these user interviews, to make the also experience pleasant for the person who is kindly giving us some of their time.
And this is another, I think, piece of the reason why Plan A is doing so well. Because I believe that for me, growth is about, it's not only about marketing, it's about improving the product. And you can't improve a product if you don't conduct these interviews here talking about brand, but I'm sure you're learning a lot about the product itself by doing that. And this is something very difficult to do for a lot of companies or people, but this is very, it's key for me to build a successful brand and product in that case.
It's also a testament to working to develop channels, a network. So over time, it's really great to be able to tap into networks of experts where they are also happy, not necessarily your clients. They provide different types of inputs, but you also need to, I think, tap into external inputs to understand if you are on the right track, if you are making sense to someone that has never really tackled this or that topic, if you are achieving the goals that you're trying to achieve. And you probably have heard of it, is your mom always is happy about what you do. She's so proud of what you're doing. So don't ask that person. Just ask someone that maybe you don't know as well, or maybe you have a more conversational level of interaction, or that you respect the input of. You have a mentor maybe, or these are the people that I also very much enjoy speaking with, and that my experience over time working with Plan A and previous experiences has given me access to. And I feel that having this access is only possible with interacting, with testing, with trying, with being out there, very simply, and making your purpose pretty clear. And it's great. You were asking about what are the different benefits we can get from LinkedIn, and this is one, and there's a lot of people just messaging you to sell you services or different goals, but there are also people that are very valuable to know. And even this salesperson, I've had fun multiple times with people sending me sales LinkedIn, sales emails, and I share them back with my sales team sometimes, because I think, some of them are good, some of them are not so good, some of them are fun. And this is, a way for me to capture some content and some conversation, as I said, that fuel my thinking.
Nathan, we've been here already for a long time, and I think we could keep on going for a long time with our conversation, because it's really like something that I'm passionate about, and that you are passionate about, obviously, and super knowledgeable about. Do you have something else you want to add in terms of do's and don'ts or advice on this last part?
So I hope we went through most of the funnel, not all of it, but maybe if there's one takeaway from this, is create a brand that, again, explicitly helps the work of the other teams in your work. So it plays its own role, as we've discussed today. Sales should feel super comfortable with using elements of the brand. The product should feel super comfortable using the guidelines you have defined for language or for other aspects of the product. The CEO of your company should understand inside out what the values are and be able to at any meeting with anyone and any public intervention, be able to state them very clearly and in a way that is very understandable. So making sure that your brand is a great coherent inner towards outer construct, and that it's understood to be a useful asset to all of the team members and all of the teams of your company. This, I think, is what will fuel the success and the usefulness of the brand that you define.
And Lubomila is doing a great job with that. Again, for those who haven't listened, to the first episode with Lubomila. Back to the questions outside of these topics. What is one book or one podcast, one influencer that you would recommend people to read or to follow?
So I have been listening to, it's pretty famous, I believe, but I really enjoy it, to Lex Fridman's podcast. So these are very long conversations that's with very, very smart people that brush on many different themes. And I really appreciate this way of triggering my interest and making connections between things that are not necessarily as connected amongst one another. So this is one big recommendations, and I cannot stress enough how much I've learned, not necessarily on marketing, but also in marketing with Arte's YouTube channels. And I think everyone should take a look at how they transmit knowledge, how they make knowledge digestible, how they make it also it's a German, French TV channel, and they are a bridge between our two cultures. So something that I think is also a very important mission, and that they achieve very well, and in the way that they organize their knowledge bank and their knowledge factory, because it is what it is. So these two recommendations, I think, are interesting to follow, albeit famous ones.
Can you tell us one thing about you that I wouldn't be able to find online?
That you wouldn't be able to find online. I play the saxophone. You might be able to find a YouTube video that's with a few views, but you might not. I'm not so sure. I haven't gone and checked. But I love music. I'm a musician, and music and communication, music and brand is really something that I'm passionate about as well.
Do you still have the playlist on Spotify? Because I remember Lubomila.
I do. We do.
Yes.
We do. So for the people listening, you can go on Spotify and look for Planet Earth in one, and you will find a playlist for the planet, which is a project that we have been building over the years to provide the best music, the best selections of playlists while you are saving the world.
What is your ask for the people listening to you here? So one question I have is about the product itself. From which company size can people start working with Plan A to decarbonize their business? And then, what is your ask? Where can they find you? How do they contact you?
Right. So there is no smallest size to start using Plan A. I can only encourage the solopreneurs, but also the individuals building up companies that are growing, to start their sustainability journey early. Not necessarily by becoming clients of Plan A, but by starting to understand the status quo, understand what is the role of businesses in this overall transformation we're trying to achieve, we need to achieve, and what is the really benefits that your activity can derive from becoming more sustainable. I firmly believe in the business case for sustainability, and in the case, the social case for sustainability. I believe that sustainability brings a lot of value, be that economic value or social well-being value, to our societies and to our organizations and to ourselves as individuals. So that's my ask, is really, get involved with sustainability, whatever your level also of seniority might be, because it can take you to places that you didn't necessarily imagine you would be taken to using this pathway. And it's a pathway that derives a lot of positive things on all of these levels. So that's what I would ask of people. And you can hopefully, if we're doing our job well, find Plan A pretty easily. Be that through our websites, in Spotify, or on LinkedIn. And we have also newsletters that you can follow. We try to communicate a lot on this education part, on the making sure that we define a decarbonization pathway for the economy in the most efficient way, in a way that will avoid negative side effects, byproducts of what we're doing, and that will also take us there in a timely manner, because maybe that's the last word. We don't have time to solve the climate crisis, so we need to get to this milestone sooner rather than later, and we need to do that together, not just one company.
And to use your tagline, there is no plan B.
There is no plan B for our planet.
Thank you very much, Nathan, for your time today and your super insightful advice today. I wish you a great day and all the best with Plan A. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon, offline or online.
Thank you so much for having me on this wonderful podcast. I'm looking forward to listening to the new season, and see you very, very soon.
Hey, if today's episode was useful, share it with your entrepreneurs' friends so that we can all have a bigger impact on this planet. And give it a 5-star on Apple Podcasts. That will make my day. Thanks so much in advance. Have a nice day.